We are now 2 weeks into Delaware's new fiscal year, and it's time to look back on the past legislative session with Delaware Governor Jack Markell. He is our first person this week. Governor, welcome.
Thank you.
Governor, were you satisfied with how things went this session?
I thought we made very good progress. We did a lot around economic development. The downtown development districts was something that was very important to us. Workers' compensation reform, the tax credit for research and development focused on small business, as well as the cybersecurity initiative. So a lot around economic development, a lot around workforce development, and a lot around criminal justice reform. So it was a productive session. Didn't get everything done that I wanted, particularly around investments in transportation and water. But overall, it was a productive session.
It seemed like heading towards June 30th, every meeting that DEFAC had to estimate the revenue for the state, it seemed like they chipped away at what was expected to come in. Did that sort of limit what you were able to get done in a way?
Oh, it definitely limited it. And I think the Joint Finance Committee, as well as the General Assembly overall, did a good job in a really, frankly, pretty challenging budget climate. But we got it done. And in addition to the budget, which is really obviously incredibly important, we got a lot of good legislation done too.
Now, you touched on it earlier, the gas tax and the water tax are two big initiatives that you had touted from the beginning of this year. They never even made it into bill form. Why, in your opinion, did they both fail?
Well, I think first of all, the good news is now people are talking about it. I obviously wish that it had gone further, but I think in terms of, I think people really understand now the importance of investing in our transportation system as well as in water. I think in election year it was tough. Frankly, they just did not want to take these things on. The problem is everybody says, okay, well, we ought to invest in transportation. We ought to clean up the water, but nobody wants to pay for it. But that's not the way the real world works. And so, but in the end, they're going to have to be done, and what form that takes, we'll have to see. In
hindsight, should you have brought in lawmakers ahead of your State of the State, given them a heads up, given it is an election year? Well, looking back, should you have done that?
I mean, a couple things. I sat down with pretty much every lawmaker, and it's just something that I do during the spring. I literally bring in either individually or in groups of 3 or 4. So sat down with everyone, talked to a lot of their constituents. I think in the end, maybe an election year, it was just difficult for them to accept.
So obviously these will be things that you'll be pushing for once the election happens in November in the next session.
Well, the issue is, I mean, the roads need to be improved. And the bridges need to be, continued to be improved as well. So I mean, it's not like these issues go away. In addition, these initiatives, these investments would have created thousands of jobs. So, again, I wish that they had gone further this time. They didn't, but it's not like these problems go away.
And on the roads, it was sort of a big picture solution that would have set the state up for road funding for several years into the future. Was it too big of a swing?
I don't know. I mean, it's like compared to what? I mean, the bottom line is Pennsylvania is now, they passed a gas tax increase. They're going to be around 60 cents a gallon. Maryland passed a big increase. They're going to be at 43.5 cents a gallon. My proposed increase was from 23 to 33 cents. That being said, I have been very clear from the beginning, I am interested in seeing the investments take place. If people have a better idea about how they can be funded, I'm certainly open to hearing those ideas.
Personally disappointed in two of these were really your biggest initiatives.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think they were certainly, I think they're important initiatives for the state. But I mean, in terms of my areas of focus, big chunk on workforce development. If you go back to my State of the State speech, which is when I first mentioned these, huge chunk on workforce development, big chunk around economic development more broadly, as well as criminal justice reform. In terms of these particular proposals, it's really less about me, and it's more about my concern that our neighboring states, our competing states, are finding the way to make these big investments, and I think it's not a great thing for Delaware to be left behind when other states are making investments and we're not.
Did 495 help you?
I don't know. I mean, I think that was, it's obviously that was a one-off where the Department of Transportation working as quickly as possible to get that reopened.
Looking at another issue that got a lot of headlines, help for the casinos, $10 million in a little bit of a split on the vendor fees for slots. How long can the state keep going to help out the casinos? When does it come to a point where this is what we're going to get?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think you have to, I'm not even sure that that's the right way to think about the question. The bottom line, I think a lot of people don't understand this, is that the casinos have long been partners with the state. And if you take a look at the revenues that fund the state's budget, a significant chunk come from the casinos. And the fact is the dynamics of that industry, the competitive dynamics have changed considerably since they started, with new competition in Maryland and new competition in Pennsylvania. So I do think we have to focus on how we reduce reliance on that particular revenue source. But it's also very true that they have been major contributors to revenues that fund education, that fund the environment, that fund the police, lots of things within the state budget.
A reduction of reliance on the casinos, would that mean a lowering of the tax revenue, or?
You know, I think, well, what you're seeing in any case in the meantime is that you've seen a lowering of revenue, mainly because of competition. What we want to make sure is we want to do what we can to make sure that they can continue to be competitive so that they continue to be a major employer in our state.
Elections in November. I'm sure you're watching the Attorney General's race. Let's say Matt Dehn obviously succeeds and does well. Are you going to be without a lieutenant governor, or how is that going to play out?
That's what it looks like. And Matt, first of all, will be a great Attorney General. He's been a terrific lieutenant governor. He was a great insurance commissioner. He's just an amazing public servant. He's brilliant and incredibly hardworking. So he'll be great in that role. But you know, assuming that he wins, which I think he will, then the way the law works is there will not be a lieutenant governor for a couple of years. And I will miss him because he's been extremely helpful. He's always been at the important budget meetings and other important considerations in the administration. And
Beau Biden, did you know he was going to run in 2016? Did you have an idea?
I wasn't totally surprised. You know, something that I had heard some things about. We haven't talked a lot about it directly, and my guess is after 2014 elections, maybe we will. But he'd certainly be a very strong candidate and could be very effective.
Back to the end of the session, you have, I guess, a lot of signing to do over the next couple weeks. Things that got passed that you may or may not sign.
Well, I've got about 150 bills. I've not finished reviewing all of them with my staff yet. We do a lot of that during the session, but it's hard to keep up with a lot of it since so much of it passes at the very end. I'll be signing very shortly the criminal justice reform bills, which I think are really important. We incarcerate more people than the national average in a country that incarcerates more than the world average, and it's not like it makes us any safer. So some of the bills I'm signing around criminal justice reform I think are really important. In terms of others, I look forward to sitting down with my staff to review them.
Is I know we featured earlier in the show the DUI
ignition interlock.
Right.
Right.
Is that something that?
That's a bill that I plan to sign. I haven't spent a lot of time on it yet, but I did meet with the folks from MAD a couple of months ago, along with Representative Keeley, and I think that bill makes sense.
Have you started to think beyond 2016? Well, to 2016 for you. What legacy you would like to leave behind?
I'm not really thinking beyond 2016 at all. I'm thinking a lot about between now and 2016, and there's just an incredible amount that I want to do. I mean, I think we have a really strong track record to build on economic development. We now have 17 months in a row where our job growth has outpaced the national average, and we've got more to go for sure, particularly around workforce development, but I'm pleased with the progress. Education, really pleased with the progress we're making there as well, although clearly you have to keep getting better. But there's a lot of work around healthcare reform, a lot of work around addictions reform, continued work around criminal justice reform, to be smarter about the way we spend our money in criminal justice. So still a lot to be done. Every day that goes by is one day less of an opportunity that we have to leave Delaware stronger, much stronger than it is today.
Do you find yourself looking back at the last 6 years and thinking, well, I only have 2 years left, I really got to get on it?
That's one of the advantages, I think, of term limits, is that we know exactly when our last day is, and it really forces the attention. And it's so as a result, I wake up every day fired up to do everything I can to make Delaware the best state it can be.
All right, Delaware Governor Jack Markell, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you for being here on First.
Thank you.
You can watch all of this interview when you click on the first person drop-down box on newsworks.org/Delaware.